Welcome to the SRS Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron J. Babyar, and I'm the Training Director of Support Raising Solutions. Whether you're a new ministry worker or a veteran looking to increase your competence and confidence, Support Raising Solutions seeks to bless you in your quest to be a spiritually healthy, vision-driven, fully funded Great Commission worker. Well, once again this week, I am joined by Mike Antonacci. Mike is joining me live via internet. We are conducting this podcast recording. I think it's late afternoon in mid-June for me, and it's also the same for you, but we are in different time zones, aren't we, sir?
Yes, sir.
So you live in the Denver area. How long have you been there?
Oh, man, I have to do math in my head. 4 years? Yeah, this is the start of my fourth year living here.
Okay. All right. And I realize you and your wife, of course, live there, but where are you both from originally?
So I'm originally from Missouri, so Kansas City area, but lived all over as a missionary. She's from Maryland, so a lot of M states.
Okay.
We both met out here. Two of her roommates worked for the same organization I do and set us up on our first date. So big fan of that.
Yeah. Of course, now they have a claim for the rest of your marriage that you need to thank them profusely all the time, right?
And we do.
Yeah. Well, that's very cool. Very cool. Well, I know that we're going to pick right up where we left off last week and discussing fear and support raising. And of course, last week we talked a lot about grace and how that relates and really is a needed, necessary thing in overcoming the fear that can really come at us. And this week we wanted to focus a little bit more on what we're deeming nature. And of course, sometimes people, particularly Christians, are, they kind of get up and like, wait a minute here, what are we talking about nature for here? Like we want to talk about God and spiritual things, but it's not that big of a disconnect, is it?
Yeah, I fully agree. Like God made our human nature a certain way. And so by understanding what he's revealing about us through that can also help us overcome fear. Obviously, we don't want to just look at nature and ignore grace. Like we can learn things from psychology, but we need to make sure we're elevating that with the supernatural help God is giving. So yeah, last week's episode was on grace. If you did not get a chance to listen to that, highly recommend. And then this week we'll dive into how does nature help us regarding fear.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, let's just do that very thing. And let's jump right in and talk about nature and just kind of the interactions of that. So go ahead and lead away, my friend.
Yeah, so this is, so I get really excited about brain science things, so I'm going to geek out with you for a little bit right now.
Go for it.
So recently learned, so there's a portion of the brain called the amygdala. It's like your emotion center, and its job is to scan your surroundings for danger, and if it detects what it thinks is danger, to ring some sort of alarm. So it could be fear, it could be pain. So I'm more familiar with the amygdala and its role in chronic pain. If you're hyper stressed, it amplifies your pain signals. Fatigue, anxiety, worry, there's a lot of things the amygdala can do. So let's say that you're at a hotel, you're staying on the 10th floor, and you step out on the balcony, great view, but your amygdala is like, oh no, this is high up. What if we fall? Sounds the fear alarm. It's now going to monitor, what do? Do you stay on the balcony because, well, there's a railing, I'm going to be totally fine, or do you leave the balcony? If you don't leave the balcony, if you stay up there, the amygdala learns maybe this wasn't actually dangerous. If you do leave the balcony, the amygdala learns this was dangerous, let me amp up the danger signal next time. So what's going on in the brain as you're getting, if you're afraid of making a phone call, making an ask, it's monitoring how you react. And so what you choose to do more starts to get reinforced. So I give that mostly as encouragement for new missionaries, that you might be terrified right now. As you continue to persevere, your brain will learn to not be as danger signaling. Now, I doubt it ever fully goes away. I still have that with some of my own support raising calls, but comparing myself now to my first year, it's definitely different. And now I know why in the brain.
Now, I love a good baseball analogy. Can I bring it out, Mike? Is that okay?
Do it.
All right. So I'm a baseball guy. My family were baseball people. My boys played baseball. I coached baseball. Actually, I used to have a batting cage in the exact place that my office is right now, where I'm sitting and talking. I used to give private hitting lessons. So I'm that guy. Okay. And I know from experience, both personally experiencing it as well as coaching baseball for years, that it's very, very intimidating, and people tend to run away the first time they step into the batter's box to face a pitcher that's throwing a ball. And the whole amygdala and all that kind of stuff, that thing is on overdrive. And so the assumption a lot of times is, I'm going to get hit, 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 I'm going to get hit. And the reality is that happens so infrequently, it happens so rarely, that over time you can get to the point where you step into the batter's box to try and hit the baseball, and you're not even thinking about that. Like, it's a possibility, but so is hitting the curb when you're driving down the street. Like, it could happen, but it's probably not going to happen. It's just, it's abnormal. And so over time, people just kind of you could say get over that fear. You could say they learn not to fear it as much. You could say they become a little bit jaded or just unconcerned about it, even though it's still possible. And if you watch any level of baseball, on occasion, people do get dinged, right? People do get hit by the baseball, and it can hurt. It can leave bruises or bloody lips or whatever else, but it's not the normal thing. And so in a similar way with support raising, whatever it is you're scared of, whether it's somebody judging you or just being really cruel or mean or laughing at you or your vision or whatever else, is that possible? Yes, always. Is it probable? No, probably not. It's probably not going to happen to you at all. And if it does, it's super rare, right?
Fully agree on that. And I remember coaching someone who he was just not making calls because he was afraid of rejection. So I'm talking through like, okay, let's imagine you call and they do say no to an appointment. What would that be like? How would you handle it? And he discovered it wouldn't actually be as bad as he thought. And in fact, him not calling, and therefore it's just ambiguous, like, will they say yes, will they say no, was worse than what would happen for the people he's called and they've said no. So you kind of learn from experience that, yeah, I've had people say no plenty of times. The vast majority are not a jerk about it. You occasionally will get that, but then
Super
it's just
rare.
super rare. And you just look at them like, what are you doing? Like, you can
Right.
just say no thanks, and that's it.
Yeah. I want to point out a resource that not all of our listeners have probably read. If you're eager to work hard to develop a solid, faithful support team to undergird your ministry for the long haul, you might want to pick up a copy of the book called Viewpoints. It's compiled and authored by Steve Shadrack, and this book called Viewpoints is filled with encouraging case studies and anecdotes that will encourage you in the support raising process. You can pick up Viewpoints at cmmpress.org, where you can receive a 10% discount if you use the code SRS Podcast. So yeah, actually, to go back to my baseball analogy then, so it's possible you're going to get hit, and then eventually you might actually get hit, and you learn a few things. Number one, and there are exceptions to this, but generally speaking, it doesn't hurt that much. Like, it doesn't hurt anywhere as bad as what you built it up in your mind to be. In fact, I remember getting plunked in the helmet, and just being like completely entertained that it didn't hurt at all. And so after that, Mike, if someone threw the ball even close to the plate, but close to me, I would just kind of like lean in, which you're not supposed to do that. Like, you're not supposed to try and get hit. But I realized, hey man, that's a free base. So, I took a little bit too far, but generally speaking, a lot of times we can get things in our head and we can make them out much worse than they are. And in fact, let's just share real quick about a time when we were raising support. And even though this is hugely abnormal, when somebody said or did something that was just, you could call it rude or hurtful or kind of out of left field, but let's share a couple times, or at least both of us share at least one time when we kind of got plunked and we realized, hey, I survived.
Yeah. The one that comes to mind was a referral from someone who had already been on my support team, and that person, the mission partner, loved the work that I was doing. And so sit down, I call the guy, he agrees to meet with me, do a normal appointment. And then at the end, when he says, no, I did what I was taught and asked, would I be able to sit down with you in a year? Not that I need to ask permission, but just trying to gauge, is this no for right now or is it no forever?
Sure.
And he kind of had this pause and he's like, no, I don't think I'm going to be interested ever. And I'm really not sure why I agreed to meet with you, because I don't really like what you're doing, and had this little mini rant. And I'm just kind of like, yeah, I don't understand why you agreed to meet with me either. And then that was it.
The end. Okay. And did you survive?
Oh, I survived. I'm still here.
Okay. Good. Good. And did you walk away with any bodily harm?
Nope.
Yeah. And did it ruin your relationship with everybody else in your life?
Nope. And I didn't have much of a relationship with him before, so it's not like it ruined an existing friendship.
Right, right. Which, it's always possible that even a friend could say something like that to you, but they're probably not going to. That's just not how things generally work. So, okay, very cool. Very cool. I mean, I'm sorry that happened to you. However, I have to say that's a great example, because that it is possible that could happen to you. So to share mine, I sat down with a guy, and similarly, it was a referral, someone I didn't know. And I was passionately sharing about how Exago, that's the ministry I technically work for as far as IRS is concerned. I work for Exago Ministries. We partner with SRS and love partnering with SRS. But yeah, I actually work for Exago, exago.org, and we do coaching and stuff for ministry leaders. But anyway, so as I was explaining to him what the ministry is that we're going to be doing and training and coaching ministry leaders, he kind of looked at me, gave me a little kind of weird, like kind of cocked his head sideways, and he goes, "Oh, it's basically just promise keepers for missionaries." And I was like, wow. No, it's more than that. And then he wanted to argue about it. He goes, yeah, it is. He goes, that's just Promise Keepers. Or why don't you just go join Promise Keepers? And I was like, maybe I didn't communicate this well enough. But he was done, Mike. He was done. He didn't want to talk about it. And he started bringing up like a couple of other things. To be honest, I don't fully remember what it was now. But I began to realize that he wanted to argue with me, because he wanted to find an excuse to not be a part of my support team. And it took me 2 or 3 tries of talking to him before I finally went, oh, actually, it's okay that he doesn't want to be a part of my team. But his real reason is he doesn't even know what he wants, but this isn't for him. And he doesn't know how to let me down easily. So he's kind of being a jerk. And so I just need to be graceful and say goodbye. And so that's what I did. But I remember definitely walking away and going, okay, that was not fun. Also, I really wouldn't want him on my team anyway, if that's how he's going to act. That's like, I'm not mad that he said no. That's probably a good thing. I don't know how to say it exactly, other than I was fearful of sitting down with a stranger, so to speak, that was going to kind of blow me up. And I ended up walking away going, okay, that didn't go like I planned, but also it's okay. It's okay. And I still got fully funded. So the reality ended up being different than what my fear was. And yeah, it wasn't all that bad. It was annoying for sure, but honestly, it really wasn't all that bad.
Yeah, and I'm sure anyone who is a veteran support raiser has many stories like this. And so if you are new and you're experiencing these same fears, just ask them to tell you one of these stories, and you can see that, sure, it can happen and it didn't ruin anyone. And we are able to get through this. And that's part of like the brain's learning, either our own experiences, other people's experiences, can dampen that fear response. I'm not sure it'll ever go away, but the point is that we are not mastered by fear. Like that's why soldiers train so many times. They want the muscle memory in the heat of battle to do what you're supposed to do. Do they feel fear when they're being shot at? Probably. I'd be surprised if they didn't, but they know how to get through that.
Yeah. They basically learn how to, I guess in some ways, not let the fear run their life, but to power through it and be heroic and handle the situation that they've been trained to.
Yeah, and the virtue for that is called fortitude, and so Virtues are a specific kind of habit. So habits, as we do them more, it gets easier to do. But a virtue is a habit that leads us to pursue something good. So Aristotle wrote extensively about habits. A lot of Greek and Romans did as well. Thomas Aquinas was how I was introduced to this concept. And so the virtue that lets us not be mastered by fear is called fortitude. And sometimes we might think, well, that's just for these big, extreme situations. How would I react? Well, unless you are in an active combat situation, you probably don't have that. But there's a version of it that I learned about in its context for chronic pain. Goes by a, I guess, paraphrase called the heroism of the mundane. That enduring the daily little repeated things is still heroic. It's not big, it's not flashy, but your faithfulness to dialing the phone when you're afraid of it and doing it, even though, yeah, they might hang up, they might not answer, or you've left them 3 voicemails already, what are you going to do? Or whatever those things are, just because they are little does not mean they are irrelevant. So seeing what are those areas in your life, we all have crosses, big or small. Jesus promised us that we would have that. And this is the nature side of how to address it. Obviously, we do want to pray. We want to have grace. We want to ask God for more courage, more fortitude. I think this is just a good framework in case you ever want to read about it more, is look into that.
Mm-hmm. So as people are dealing with that tricky thing that is fear, and of course last episode we were talking about grace, and now we're talking a little bit about nature. What are some other tips that people need to keep in mind as they kind of connect the dots on some of this?
I think talking to people who've been through it before, and that's when we also mentioned on the episode on grace, is to be able to draw encouragement from people who've been on this journey. I think that's also true in nature, and also people who've had more experience might be able to point out specific mindsets you've had, or hey, I've found if I do phone calls in this way, it makes it easier for me to do phone calls. They might have some very practical things tailored to your situation. And I also mentioned last time, as Westerners and Americans, and I know not everyone on this podcast listening to it is that, but that's what I am. We tend to try to do everything on our own without the rest of the body of Christ. And it is very helpful to bring other people into it. You probably are going to have a coach who's helping you with your support raising. You probably have teammates and a supervisor. Bring people in so that they can support you in that. Because if you try to do it on your own, whether without others or without God, it probably won't go well. And I'm sure both Aaron and I have stories for times we tried it and fell on our faces.
Too many. Too many. Yeah. I'll just double stamp that. Mike, I've said this before. I'll say it again because I think people underestimate coaching. That it is one of the best things you can do is, yes, read the God Ask, read all the scriptures, do all the prep before you go to boot camp. Yes, go to support raising boot camp, totally do that. But third, but not least, is have a coach, preferably someone that knows what they're talking about, who is fully funded, not somebody who's read a book on it, but they've actually done it. Have a coach, have somebody be able to speak into your life. And in this particular area, let them know, be honest, like, I'm just struggling. Like I can barely speak. Like I can barely get the words out. Like I'm so worried, or I can't sleep at night the night before. And then I show up at my meeting and I'm tired and my eyes are red. I look like I haven't slept in 7 days because I've been so worried. Like, let people know that. You don't have to tell everybody that, but let somebody that's been there, done that, who can speak truth into your life, that will help you learn to, I'm gonna sway back to the baseball analogy, that'll help you learn to stand in the box and wait for your pitch and not be so scared of getting hit by the pitch that you miss the opportunity to hit a home run. And I think that's Mike, I think your advice there was really wise. I think that's part of learning to persevere. That's part of having fortitude, is realizing that first of all, yeah, it's not all about the money, but also you're not alone. And I don't mean that in just a spiritual standpoint. That's true, but also the odds are very high. You know someone, or you can find someone that knows how to coach and raise and support, that can help walk you through these days that are in front of you, because they're not going to be easy, but that doesn't mean they're going to be impossible. And overcoming fear, I think, is it's something that we have to do intentionally. In most cases, it doesn't just happen. We have to make some choices, and we definitely need to lay it before the Lord. So, well, Mike, as is my habit, I like to invite the guests to kind of have the last word. So as we close up our 2-part episode on fear, I give you the microphone once again.
Yeah, I think kind of to tie these 2 episodes together, it's important to recognize and not be ashamed of the fact that we feel fear, because we see that Jesus was not ashamed of that. And in recognizing it, that's how we can bring it to God and to others. That's how we can persevere and start building those habits that help us be faithful to what the Lord has called. And I think, like I mentioned in the previous episode, having that conviction of how the Lord called you helps you get through this, because then, well, if he's called me, I'm going to be faithful to that. And that means including when the fear is coming. So yeah, like you said, no, you are not alone. If I meet a support raiser who has never been afraid in their support raising, I don't know what I would do. I think the phrase is normally like, give them whatever amount of money, but if they're fully funded, it doesn't matter. So not a great analogy, but I don't think I'd meet very many people, or any, who would say that. So know you're in good company. The journey can be hard, but most things in life that are worth it are.
Yeah. Great. Well, Mike, thank you for joining us once again on the SRS podcast.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us for this episode. We would love to hear your ideas for future content. Please visit supportraisingsolutions.org/feedback to share your thoughts and questions. Also, wherever you download your podcast from, be sure to subscribe for future episodes and come back each week to gain more insight into the process of building and maintaining your personal support team.